What's going on, everybody? It's ETA Prime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the all-new Red Magic 10. And if you're familiar with the Red Magic brand, you know they do make some really awesome gaming phones. But when it comes to the new Red Magic 10, this is really going to be a game changer for Android gaming because it's actually packing the new Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Elite. And I've done a little bit of testing with this chip on the channel. It's an absolute beast. Another new thing we're seeing here from Red Magic is the display itself. This is the first phone with a 95.3 screen-to-body ratio, so there's hardly any bezels on this unit, and it's actually using a custom AMOLED display coming in at 6.85 inches and up to 144 Hertz. Since we've got a Red Magic device, there's a little bit of RGB around back here, but I do think it looks pretty good. We've got that X up in the top right-hand corner and the Red Magic logo in the lower left-hand corner. Along with this, it's got their new 11-layer cooling system, along with their low-power 25,000 RPM fan. So it does have active cooling here, and for the Snapdragon 8 Elite, keeping it nice and chilly will allow us to get the maximum performance for longer periods of time. This thing is lightning fast, and I've had it for about 3 days so far, but I can kind of give you my first impressions. We'll go over everything, do some testing in this video. I've been playing a lot of emulation on it, a lot of native Android games. I mean, it's been working out really well. And the one we have here is the Red Magic 10 Pro. But keep in mind, they will be offering 3 different variants along with different color variants. So you've got the Shadow with 12 gigs of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage. The Dusk with 16 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabytes of storage. And Moonlight with the 16 gigs and 512. And like I mentioned, when it comes to the overall specs, this is utilizing the new Snapdragon 8 Elite. And with this, Qualcomm did go in a little bit of a different direction than they have in the past with their Gen 2, Gen 3, and even the Gen 1, because they've actually done away with efficiency cores. And we've got 2 big prime cores that clock up to 4.32 gigahertz and 6 performance cores up to 3.53. And when it comes to the new GPU, we've got 3 GPU slices, and this will clock up to 1.1 gigahertz. And they're claiming 40% faster performance, 40% better power saving, and 45% increase in ray tracing performance in Android. And through all of my testing with the Snapdragon 8 Elite, yeah, it's the fastest Snapdragon chip that I've tested in a phone so far. And Red Magic has kind of added its own spin on this because we've got that Ice 10 cooler. It's an 11-layer cooling system with their 25K RPM fan, 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5X, 512 gigabytes of UFS 4.1 storage, and the storage on this thing is really quick. Got that custom 6.85 inch, 144 Hz AMOLED display, 1.5K resolution, up to 2000 nits peak brightness, 95.3 screen to body ratio, so there's hardly any bezels on this thing, as you can see. It's got Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 5.4, and NFC. It's got a 7,000 milliamp hour battery, well, a little over 7,000 milliamps. It'll do 100 watt fast charging, and out of the box, this is running Android 15 with Red Magic UI. The first thing I really wanted to take a look at with this device were some benchmarks, and we're going to be facing this off against the Galaxy S24 Ultra with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. When it comes to Geekbench 6, over on the left-hand side, we've got that Red Magic 10, single core 3217, on the S24 Ultra, 2166. And from this, you can also see that multi-core is beating out that 8 Gen 3. And we kind of suspected we'd see a nice bump in performance. Really nice to see this kind of multi-core performance jump, though. Moving over to a GPU benchmark, we've got 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme on the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, 4,942. And on the Red Magic 10, up to 7,000 with this new Adreno GPU. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Average frame rate there, 42 FPS on the Red Magic 10, 29 on the Galaxy S24 Ultra. And the final one here is Antutu on the Red Magic 10, 2,820,000. On the S24 Ultra, 1,787,000. Now that S24 Ultra is not a slouch when it comes to an Android phone. I mean, it's still a really fast device, but just seeing this kind of jump and looking down the list, you can see that that GPU score alone is over 1 million with the Red Magic 10. This thing really wouldn't be a gaming phone without some gaming-centric settings here. And we're just running Minecraft. Basically, anything's going to be able to run this. But any game you're playing, if you swipe over from the right or the left-hand side, it's going to bring up our performance overlay. From here, we can actually set up different power profiles. So there's an eco, there's a balanced, there's a rise. With this, you could go to eco mode, play it all day at 120 Hz, not a problem for Minecraft. But there's also a hidden feature here known as Diablo mode. Basically, it's just going to take the clocks up as high as they can go on the CPU and the clocks up as high as they can go on the GPU also. It's definitely going to burn more battery and get a bit hotter. That little fan does spin up. It's not super loud, but it keeps it nice and chilly, and I've been running this in Rise mode for most of the harder to run Android games and even emulation, but for the most part, I mean, you could get away with balanced mode. Even Genshin Impact is going to run at very high settings, 60, in balanced mode. We've also got some performance metrics that we can throw up on screen, like real-time FPS counter, and there's also built-in plugins, like an on-screen crosshair, there's a hunt mode, there's a macro that you can set up. This phone fully supports keyboard and controllers, plus there's a built-in on-screen key mapper. That way you can play games that don't natively support controllers, like Genshin Impact. But one game I personally always get asked about is Fortnite on Android. And yeah, you can install this from the Epic Store. You have to download that APK. This is not a hacked version, this is the real Android version. And the controller I'm using is known as the Vagabond. I did a video on it. It's USB Type-C, and it does seem to function really well with this phone. But going into the settings here with Fortnite on Android, I'm totally maxed out, and I believe we can only go up to 90 Hz with the game itself. But I've got 100% resolution, high settings, that FPS as high as it can go. And I'm not sure if this game on different phones can go up to 120, but 90 was the highest option. And I'm only in balanced mode right now. We're not even in Rise mode with the Red Magic 10. I'll tell you, there's not a game for Android that I've tested yet that wasn't able to run at full speed on this device. What we're kind of running into now is needing better software or better games for the hardware we have with this new Snapdragon 8 Elite. This thing is packing so much CPU and GPU performance, no matter what game you get from Google Play, you're going to be able to max it out on a device like this. So since we've got this new hardware for Android, I'm really hoping that developers kind of jump on porting more PC games over to Android, kind of like we're seeing with the iPhone and iPad. I got a couple more native Android games that I wanted to test, and then we'll move over to a little bit of emulation. But here's Call of Duty Warzone Mobile, and right now I'm at the highest settings, highest frame rate, only in balanced mode. I do have that on-screen FPS counter right there, 100, a little over 100. I'm not sure if this does 120 continuously or not, but I've tested it in the past on devices, and basically I've been able to take it up to 90 Hz, so I'm not exactly sure if this phone is whitelisted or not, but there's no doubt that this runs really well on this device. I also wanted to show off Genshin Impact, and we're at the highest settings, 60 FPS, and by the way, I'm using an Xbox controller and the built-in controller mapper from Red Magic. It's super simple to set up. Basically, we can map on-screen touch points to physical controls. That way we can play a game like this on Android with a controller, because the developers seem to not really care about Android and give everything over to iOS. But maxed out, no problem to run this, again, in balanced mode. And when it comes to emulation, that Snapdragon 8 Elite can really hold it down. Right now I've got the Dolphin emulator running with one of my favorite games, Auto Modelista. OpenGL backend, 6x resolution, which is crazy for an Android device. On the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, we can actually take this game up to 4x, which is still more than enough for displays like this. But I wanted to go into the settings and show you that we are running at a true 6x, so it's 4K GameCube running on this phone. Nobody really needs this on a mobile device given the resolution of these displays, but luckily this does support HDMI over USB Type-C, and it will do up to 4K 120 out or 1440p 144 Hz. So if you wanted to play this on a larger screen, you definitely could. Plus, it's got Red Magic's console mode built in. I will be doing a dedicated video on that, but the last thing I wanted to test here was some PS2 using Nether SX2, and it still looks like there needs to be a little more optimization for this chip and the emulator itself, because we're seeing the same kind of resolutions and basically the same kind of performance that the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 puts out. It just hasn't been optimized for this new, more powerful CPU-GPU combo. Personally, I'm kind of excited to see what these newer chips are going to bring over to Android when it comes to emulation. I'm hoping for like an original Xbox or an Xbox 360 emulator. So far, in the time I've spent with the new Red Magic 10, this has been an awesome performing Android phone. Definitely one of the best, and I kind of expected it would be, given that we've got that new Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset here. And even though that chip is packing a lot more power than previous models from Qualcomm, we're still seeing some really great battery life, and especially given the fact that we've got a 7,000 milliamp hour battery. If you're not doing any gaming, which most people who pick these up will be doing gaming, you could get 2 days of battery life out of this thing easily with that 7,000 milliamp hour battery. And as for battery life while gaming, it's going to depend on what game you're running and power profile, but I'd say you can get anywhere from 4 to 8 hours of gameplay out of this thing. It just really depends on what you're going to be playing on this device. I personally love the overall design here, and this screen is beautiful. I'm a sucker for an AMOLED. And I love the fact that we've basically got 0 bezels on this thing. It looks really good set up like this. But that's going to wrap it up for my first look video. I will have at least one more coming up. I want to show off console mode here on a bigger screen. Like I mentioned, you can do up to 4K 120 or 1440 at 144. Definitely gives us a full screen experience, plus you can still use the phone itself. But if you're interested in learning a little more about the new Red Magic 10, I'll leave some links in the description, and if there's anything else you want to see running on this device, just let me know in the comments below. But that's it for this one. Like always, thanks for watching.